Well, good morning. My name's Martin. Welcome back to another week on my allotment. It's Monday morning. It's 5:25 and I've got a couple of hours up here now before I have to shoot off and put my van in for MOT, and then hopefully Cheryl will meet me at the garage and bring me back here in the car. Let's hope. We had a lovely weekend down at Mum and Dad's. It was their diamond wedding anniversary, 60 years married. Wow. And it was a wonderful weekend. They had lots of company. They had all their grandchildren around them, and they even had a brand new great grandchild. So a very special weekend for them. Lots of company. They thrive in company, and they had a smile on their face all weekend. So it was lovely, and it was wonderful to be a part of that. So, but back on the plot, wow, what a difference. John, my friend, very kindly watered some of the stuff in the small pots I've got up here. But you will know that I've been fretting somewhat over the lack of germination of the squashes, the pumpkins, the butternuts, the mashed potato butternut. And one of my subscribers put on a very pertinent comment and said, you know, the heat we're getting now will make a difference, stick with it. And I read that comment in the house, and I thought, right, that last packet of mashed potato butternuts that sat in the shed, I'm going to go down now and I'm going to sow them and be damned. So thank you for your encouragement, and actually you're spot on. And I'll show you a clip of the greenhouse in a minute. A lot of the stuff in the greenhouse has now come up here, and I brought some this morning. But I've had some success with germination of the squashes. I haven't, for some reason, the pumpkins have been fine, and I brought 5 more pumpkins up today. They're a little bit smaller than I would normally put in the ground, but I think they'll be fine. But I've had some butternuts germinate. Not all of them, but considerably more. I did have only one plant, and now I've got, well, I don't know, I've not really counted, but you know, I've had some germination, so I'm thrilled with that. And you know, that's taught me another lesson that I really shouldn't need to learn. But talking of that, this is my 5th summer here on this allotment, 5th year of growing vegetables, and I think it's a good time just to, if I was to speak to somebody just about to take on a plot or to create a kitchen garden, what would be my 5 tips to them as, you know, encouragement and words of wisdom? So I've, you know, made a little note before we went away, and I've brought those notes with me, and I shall impart those shortly. You won't find any surprises on there. It's all the same old established wisdom, and there's a reason for that. It's because all the old established wisdom works. So yeah, my 5 tips to anyone taking on a new allotment. I'm going to walk you through the plot now. I mean, I haven't actually been down the end of the plot, and I'm going to do that before I film it. But I've got strawberries. You know, that's the first thing I've noted. So I need to get these netted today. That's a wonderful moment, isn't it, when you're walking past these strawberry plants all year, and they're looking very damp and flooded and sorry for themselves. And then you see the flowers develop, and then you see the little fruit come through from the flower, and today there's red. Wow, what a moment. So welcome along, it's good to have you with me. I'm going to shoot off now and have a quick walk down the plot, and then I'm going to get the Kelly kettle on. So, to start the grand tour, the blackberries are looking wonderful. Onions are doing good. This pot or tub of parsnips needs some radical hand weeding. I can do that today. And then the other tubs of parsnips are in their various stages of progress and are looking good, as are these onions. So moving on, that's the josterberry, full of fruit, looking good. Coming through to the main plot. I've just spent 5 minutes as I wandered down. I had a look at these Brussels sprout plants and they were covered in tiny little slugs. So I spent 5 minutes picking them off by hand and dispatching them. So you know, that's the good thing about walking the plot when you arrive, is just take your time, and when you slowly walk up and down your plot you start to see things that you don't necessarily see when you're busy doing things, and it was time well spent. Also these French dwarf beans have taken a bit of a bashing from the slugs. You know, it's inevitable. Some of them are starting to get away from the ground, which means they'll be strong enough to withstand the inevitable attacks. The tomatoes look okay. They look a little bit lank around the bottom leaves, but all the new top growth is looking healthy. So I think, you know, the transplant shock that they inevitably suffered, despite me hardening them off over a week, I think they're through that. And with this nice warm weather they should be absolutely fine. The peas are really romping away now. I mean, some of them are almost at the top of the frame, so, and they're covered in flower, so that's all good news. Give them the water today. Not sure about that Tromboncini courgette plant, that's not really moved much. Anyway, some things work, some things don't. Another bed of onions looking good. A bed of leeks that are just starting to thicken up now and establish themselves. This is a bed of broccoli and cauliflower. They all look fine actually. Yeah, they look good. Those are the pumpkins I put in the other day, and on all but one there's marked growth. These are the other two Tromboncini courgettes, and actually they look a lot healthier than the third one. So if I got 2 out of 3 to grow, that would be a good result. Potatoes are looking healthy, all the main crops. These trays, I'm not sure how successful they'll be, because I've filled them a couple of times, and I filled them before I went away this weekend, and they're bone dry now. Not sure if that's working. And again, the beetroot has looked very sorry for itself over the last couple of weeks, but what a difference this weekend has made. They've really put on some strong top growth there, so that looks good. And the sweet peas the same, they're just starting now to look healthy, and I can see some flower buds on them already, which is good news. There's another small sowing of conventional peas over there, and again they're looking okay. And here to the strawberry beds, and in fact there's a nice looking strawberry there. Not sure if the slugs have found them yet, I'm sure they will, but I've tried all 3 methods now. First year or 2 I did the conventional thing of putting straw around them. I personally found all that did was give the slugs somewhere to hide, and I lost a lot of strawberries because the slugs were able to hide in the straw. From that year on I changed to planting them through membrane, and that was very successful, but I then needed to remove it to improve the soil, and they were all new plants last year. So this year I'm just growing them in soil, and I'll see how that works. We've had a week of pickings of the broad beans. They've been fantastic, and we've picked them nice and young, and we've put them raw on our salads and Cheryl is particularly happy with that. And you know how these things work. If the wife is happy, happy wife, happy life. Those two courgette plants there with the high-tech watering system are looking good. What else can I show you? Oh, the gooseberries. They're looking fantastic. Yeah, very good. And I've just noticed the first runner bean plant has found the stick and is now winding its way up the pole. There's some good news. And that's below it. That's my one butternut plant. That's not looking particularly good. Okay, I can't afford to lose that. Although, as I've just said, I do have others now that have germinated. Yeah, so... Oh, and the sunflowers have really put on a spurt. Looking great. My little flower trough is looking good. The blueberries have got blueberries on them, which is always good news. And then I've got celery plants that are starting to put some growth on, and some spring onions, and they need a bit of weeding now. I've just bought up these some more dwarf French beans. This is the perpetual spinach. Some runner beans, and I'm going to try and be patient and leave them out of the ground for another week so they can get a bit more growth, and then I can tie them into the poles and hopefully they'll be away from the slugs from the start. A box of celery. I'm trying another method there, and I've put drain holes in that plastic box, but I've put the drain holes halfway up the box so that there should be a sump of water in theory, because celery is a bog plant and likes to be wet. And then coming round, I've got a few spare plants. I'm not sure quite what I'm going to do with. Some spring onions, some Welsh onions, and then a few tomato plants and more French beans. And these are the plants that John's kindly watered over the weekend. Not quite sure what to do with them. And last but not least, the tubs of carrots are looking good. So, the first week of June, and finally the plot is establishing. The plants look strong and healthy, and I'm starting to relax that I'm going to have some crops later in the year. Very happy. Those are cucumbers, Market More. Those are the mashed potato butternuts. You can see the sort of germination I've finally achieved. And this is the second lot I sowed, which has had much better germination. One pumpkin out, or two pumpkins out of those have germinated. Those are my butternut squashes. So yeah, very happy that I've got some squashes now germinated, and then there's some curly kale and another lot of brassicas coming on as a replacement for the ones when we harvest them. So not quite the disaster I anticipated. And then the tomatoes are going apace, and I've put some basil in to accompany them. A much better outcome than I was expecting. So what would my 5 tips be in my 5th year of owning an allotment to anybody starting out, hoping to, or getting an allotment, or starting a kitchen garden? The first one, I think I'd hit them with a dose of reality. Allotments are hard work, and there are no shortcuts. And anyone who tells you that there are, go and look at their plot. Yeah, they're hard work. There's no way round this thing. You know, the ground initially has to be dug. You've got to improve the soil, and I know that conventional wisdom now is tipping towards no dig, and there's huge wisdom in that. But even with no dig, you know, the weeding, the hoeing, lots of seed sowing, paths have got to be maintained, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, number one, they're hard work. An allotment is a major commitment, and the success of your plot is directly proportional to the effort you put in. You know, and everyone has a different life, and this isn't meant as a criticism, but there are plots up here where the holders are here, if not every day, certainly a few times a week, and they're putting in some serious hours. There are others where you don't see them from week to week. There are some you don't see from month to month. And I guarantee you, if you go and look at their plots, you can tell which one is which. You know, and I've heard this, oh, do little and do it often. Well, I don't subscribe to that. I understand that advice, but what I find is you've got to do a lot and do it lots. And if you're not prepared for that, do something else with your time. It's no great shame, but an allotment is hard work. After having trampled on their enthusiasm with that one, I would say the second point is enjoy your successes. It's very important to enjoy an allotment, but learn from your mistakes. That, you know, is so important. If you're not prepared to cock it up, don't start with an allotment, because you see an awful lot of articles in newspapers and magazines now about the benefit of gardening and allotments to your mental health, and I'm loath to use that phrase. I'm not a fan of that phrase, but yeah, there's a lot of talk and newspaper ink used talking about the benefits, both physically and mentally, of gardening and allotments in particular. But there's no or very little mention of how bad it is mentally when it all goes wrong. So yeah, enjoy your successes, and there will be many, but learn from your mistakes. You know, I spend all years as I, you know, get things wrong or they're not quite as good as I want them to be, thinking, right, next year I will do A, B and C rather than what I've done this year. And I think that's a really significant thing for me. I'm a cynic and a pessimist by nature, but you can't be if you own an allotment. So when I'm on the allotment, it changes the way I think. So yeah, enjoy it, but be prepared to learn from your mistakes. Number 3. Yeah, number 3. Martin, for crying out loud, listen to your own advice, will you? Number 3, be patient. You know, when you get to January, February, and you've got all these seed packets, and you think, oh, if I sow them now, I'll get a head start. That almost never works. It hasn't worked for me this year. I had windowsills full of sowings and seedlings, and almost none of them are with us now. They've all hit the dust. And it's the things I've sowed in the last 2 weeks that are really thriving. And it's like somebody's flicked a switch on this allotment this week, where the warmth has kicked in, the soil is warm, the temperature's warm, the nighttime temperatures, most critically, are now up in double figures, and everything's thriving. Almost in every situation, it's better to sow later than sooner. Yeah, be patient. Number 4, very practical, very simple point, label everything. How many times have I gone, oh yeah, no, I won't put a label in that one, I know what that is, you can't mistake that. 2 weeks later, what on earth, you know, is that a courgette, or is it, you know, a butternut? Label everything. Number 5, growing the fruits and vegetables on the plot is only half the story. Monty Don wrote a book a few years ago called Fork to Fork, and he co-wrote it with his wife Sarah, and I think that's probably the best title for any allotment, from fork to fork, i.e. garden fork to dinner fork. And once you've grown the crop, you've then got to know what to do with it, how to preserve it, how to store it over winter, and how to use it, most importantly. And, you know, I've heard people say, oh, you know, look, you should grow something different every year. And if that's what works for you, then fine. But we don't, because we know what we eat. I mean, onions, and I know there's wisdom that says, oh, onions are cheap in the shop, better to grow something more expensive. Well, okay, that might work for you. But for me, and more particularly for my wife Cheryl, who is really in charge here, although, you know, she's a silent partner on the plot, that's what we use in the kitchen. I say we. So Cheryl says we need lots of onions, we need lots of garlic, lots of leeks, and we've now, you know, butternut squashes now feature quite heavily in our winter cooking. So yeah, that's what we grow. And yeah, so half the story is once you leave the plot, and that's probably where we've had to learn the most. So yeah, I hope though, I mean, if you're starting out on an allotment, you're probably not watching this, but they would be my 5 tips. I'd be interested to hear if you have any others. Yeah, I hope they help. Well, let's all go on the plot. I've done a lot of watering. As you've seen, I've moved quite a bit of water into that dip tank down there using the submersible pump, and I've watered a few things around the plot with the pump. I'm very happy. It's the first time I've used it properly on site. It's quite slow to fill the barrel, but you know, you can set it off and walk away. So yeah, busy. However, that doesn't mean that we can go without our niff, naff and trivia. So without further ado, did you know a group of pandas is called an embarrassment? The man who invented the plastic garden flamingo dressed in matching clothes with his wife for 35 years. There are some strange people. 26 tons of clothing are abandoned each year at the start of the Boston Marathon. The surnames of the two most famous football commentators in Russia are Gusev, which is goose, and Utkin, which is duck. Before he became a billionaire, Roman Abramovich ran a company that made plastic ducks. Piggy banks get their name from the Old English word pig, P-Y-G-G, meaning clay. Every new car is first modelled in clay by a sculptor. In 2017, Bentley launched a new off-road model fitted out for falconers, complete with perch and a gauntlet compartment. I have a feeling that may be for the Middle East market. Migrating birds are welcomed to New Zealand every spring by the bells of St Paul's, Papanui, ringing for half an hour. Birds in cages hop in the direction they would migrate if they could. More than half of all species on Earth are moving their habitats due to climate change. 65 million years ago, there were frogs that ate dinosaurs. Dinosaurs were living on Earth before Saturn got its rings. The world's oldest rock is 4.38 billion years old. And last but not least, the world's largest gold nugget had to be broken up because it was too big to fit on the bank's scales. What a fascinating world we live in. This is a bed of perpetual spinach I've sown this year. And I'm weeding it, and I've stopped because what initially looks like weeds is New Zealand spinach coming up. This raised bed had New Zealand spinach in it last year, and there are seedlings in it. It's obviously dropped its own seeds, and so I've got a mix in this raised bed now of New Zealand spinach and perpetual spinach. So what a happy bit of luck. A few years ago, one of my customers, I'm guessing he was in his late 80s, early 90s, he wasn't very mobile, couldn't do a lot for himself, but he bought himself one of these litter picker things, so that if he dropped something on the floor, because he couldn't bend down, he could pick it up, and it helped him to do various mundane tasks around the house. And this litter picker thing he bought in a shop, one of these mobility shops, and it was called the Helping Hand. Anyway, he loved that thing, and he was never without it. It was always in his hand when I saw him. Anyway, unknown to me, and I found out this later. He's long gone now, unfortunately, but this Helping Hand litter picker thing broke. So he thought, I'll get myself another one. So he went back to the original shop that he bought this thing in. It was some sort of mobility shop. And unknown to him, in the time since that had broke, or he bought it, the shop had changed hands, and it was now an Ann Summers shop. So he, wandered in completely unaware of his surroundings, as it tends to be at that age, and he went up to the desk in this Ann Summers shop. How he got past all the things they sell, I don't know. He went up to the counter to this very young lady and said, "Excuse me, I'd like to buy a helping hand, please." well, she had she'd never heard of such a thing, but with a name like that in an Ann Summers shop, she went on the computer, and it was 5 minutes later she was looking. I mean, God only knows what she was looking for, but she said, "I'm sorry, I can't find a helping hand anywhere." And then, somebody came along and sorted out the the misunderstanding, and it was explained to him that they don't sell that kind of thing and that he might want to look elsewhere. Everything's in the detail, isn't it? I'd like to buy a helping hand, please. Well, not the biggest haul in the world, but it's a start. Well, I can't tell you how relieved I am that the butternuts have germinated. Obviously still in the greenhouse, but the plot's looking good. I'm on top of it. The weeding is not getting away from me. Done a bit of watering today. Yeah, and it's looking good. A little bit of niff, naff and trivia, and all being well, I shall see you next weekend. Look after yourselves. Thanks to those who've subscribed. Please hit the thumbs up if you can, and take care of yourself. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.